Hello everyone, and welcome to the Jupyter Notebooks overview lecture. A quick note, check the previous lectures for installation instructions if you haven't installed Jupyter Notebooks already on your system. In this lecture, we're going to just be looking at an overview of the Jupyter Notebooks capabilities and the best way to use them. So let's go ahead and jump to the Jupyter Notebooks. Alright, so I started Jupyter Notebooks by following the installation instructions where you just type Jupyter Notebook either into your terminal or into PowerShell or your command prompt, depending what system you're using. You should get something like this in your browser. I suggest using Chrome or Firefox. Go ahead and click on the right. You should see an option for creating notebooks, either Python 2 or Python 3, depending on your installation. And then you'll see something like this. So let's go ahead and go over what these buttons are and what this system's like. So first off, we have our toolbar here. This is a save button, which saves and creates a checkpoint for your notebook. This plus button will insert a new cell, and we'll discuss what cells are in a second. So if we click it, we have a new cell. You can cut, copy, and paste cells using these three buttons. This allows you to move up a selected cell and then move down a selected cell. This is run, stop, and restart kernels, which is basically just the same as running a cell. And then you have another toolbar here for file options, edit options, viewing options, inserting options for cells, then running options, kernel options if you're ever having trouble with a kernel being stuck in a loop, and then you also have help. So there's keyboard shortcuts here in case you want to know more about the shortcuts, and there's also help for the various libraries used in scientific Python. Alright, so let's go ahead and see how this works. So for Python, we can go ahead and just write code straight into this cell. So for instance, 1 plus 1. And to run this cell, I could either click run here, and I will see a new output right below the cell. Or I can also type in the code, and by clicking shift and then enter, that will run the cell. So it's not just enter, it's shift and then enter. Alright, so that's one key feature of the Jupyter Notebooks. Another one is hints and docstring completion. So what I mean by that is if I start to write a function in Python, so for instance, str, which converts things to strings, I can click shift plus tab, and it will bring up the document string. So it will return a nice string representation of the object. I can also call help on any function, and I will get the entire docstring for that function. So you have a couple options here. Again, whatever function you have, and I just cleared that by running an empty cell. Whatever function you have, so for instance, let's do another function. Let's go ahead and import from the math library. So I'm going to say from math, import sqrt, shift, enter. And now, if I'm using sqrt and I'm not sure what to do with it, I can do shift tab with my cursor right after that function, and it'll give me the document string. It'll give me the short version, and if I want more, I can click plus here, and it will grow this to give you more information if there's more information available there. So for instance, if we wanted more information on list, shift tab, gets me the doc string. If I want more information, click this down. It'll give you more information if there's more information available. Alright, so what else can we do? We can also see methods and attributes of an object. So for instance, if I say s equals string, let's say it's hello, shift enter. Now s is going to be that string. So one thing to note is that these cells are not independent of each other. If I set a variable in one cell, that variable can be run in any other cell. So if I click s here, it's saved as hello. So just keep that in mind. Again, you can always check the order you ran cells in by checking the numbers here. So 1, 2, 5, 6, 7. 4, we ran over it so that we did 3. But what's nice about Jupyter Notebook and IPython in general is that if you click S dot, so let's say we wanted to do a certain method, such as uppercase all this letters or elements in that string, I could call upper on it, and then we get that as an output. So what if you don't remember what these various attributes and methods are for a string or any object? you can do s dot, or whatever object you have. The dot will be calling the method or attribute on it. And then if you click tab, you'll get a little drop-down list of all the methods and attributes you can call on that object. This is super useful to know. So again, whenever you have an object and you want to call a method or attribute on it, but you're not sure which ones are available, you can have the object, click dot, and then tab, and it'll open up a drop-down list for you. And then if you click one of these, so let's say I want to do capitalized, if I'm not sure what it does, I can just click Shift Tab, and it'll return the docstring for that method. Okay, so those are the main things to know about the Jupyter Notebooks. One last good thing to know is that there's actually different types of cells. So I'll go back to the first cell and delete the code from it, and you can change the cell type. So Jupyter Notebooks don't actually support just code. They can also support Markdown and other cell types. So if you go here to this toolbar or drop-down menu, you'll find that right now we have a code cell. I can click this and change it to a Markdown cell. You'll notice that inbox goes away, and now I can actually write Markdown, which is just basic text. So I can say hello, and when I run this cell, either by clicking here or by saying Shift Enter, you'll notice I just have Markdown text. So that's not in Python or any coding, it's just Markdown text in the Markdown cell. I can double click to edit that text. So this supports various Markdown syntax. So in case you're familiar with Markdown syntax, you can go ahead and take advantage of this. You'll see a lot of this Markdown in the Jupyter Notebooks we have corresponding to every video lecture, so just keep that in mind. These are really useful for writing yourself notes or explanations. So for instance, you just ran 1 plus 1, I hit Shift Enter, the next cell, I'm going to delete that and turn it into a Markdown cell, and then leave myself a little note. I just added 2 numbers. Shift Enter to run it, and here I've left myself a little note about what that cell does, which sometimes might be nicer than writing a comment here. So that's totally up to you. There is a shortcut for making cells into Markdown cells. That shortcut is clicking Control M and then M again. But notice how I'm selecting the cell, it's not going to work. So I have to click outside of the cell. See, notice the highlighting. If I click outside of the cell, do Control M once, and then click M again, it will turn it to a Markdown cell. And now you'll notice here, I've converted this into Markdown text, and all Markdown conventions apply here. You can go ahead and read more about Markdown cells and Markdown conventions if you want to know the various syntax that I can write here to edit the text itself. One last thing to note on Markdown is it also supports LaTeX, in case you're familiar with LaTeX. LaTeX is just the ability to write mathematical equations. So for instance, I can say sqrt, let's say of x here, see if that works. And here, let's go ahead and remove the parentheses since they're not actually needed. And I can write mathematical equations in the Jupyter Notebooks. So that's also really useful for scientific computing and various aspects of mathematics and coding. Another good thing to note, if you accidentally put, for instance, a while loop and it's running forever and you want to cancel or stop the notebook from running, you can go here to kernel and you can interrupt, restart, or reconnect your kernel, and that will allow you to basically reset the Jupyter Notebook. That's all you need to know really for this course. One quick note, in the resource section of this lecture, there's a link to this manual here. And this manual is basically the complete Jupyter Notebook user's manual. It has a lot of information, and you can check it all out here. Goes over what we just went, getting to know Jupyter Notebook's toolbar. It goes way beyond the basics. Talks about Markdown cells, raw cells, and header cells, various cells that we don't use too often in this course. But you can go ahead and check it out here. One quick note, in case you see people calling this an IPython notebook, Jupyter Notebooks used to be called IPython notebooks until recently, where they changed the name to reflect that it supports other languages than just Python. So just keep that in mind, that IPython notebooks and Jupyter Notebooks are essentially the same thing, with Jupyter Notebooks being the new name for IPython notebooks. Alright, so you can go ahead and click the link in the resource section to get a full background on all the capabilities of Jupyter Notebooks, as well as instructions on how to write various headers and Markdown text, etc. Okay, thanks everyone for watching this lecture. That's it for now. In the next lecture, what we're going to do is actually go over how we create the interview question notebooks. All right, thanks everyone, and I'll see you at the next lecture.